And good morning, team. We're just waiting for a minute or so before we start, so just bear with us, please. Okay, we might kick off. Good morning, everyone. I'm Beata Brennan, Head of Small Business Metro in South Australia and Western Australia here at NAB. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people here today. Welcome. On behalf of NAB, I want to welcome you to another one of our webinars aimed at helping businesses to succeed. As the largest business bank in the country, we want to play a small role in helping business owners manage their business with more success and less stress. We hope that you enjoy and get value from this webinar today. The webinar will go approximately 60 minutes, but if you have questions along the way, please don't hesitate to drop a question in the Q&A box at the bottom of the window, and we'll do our best to answer all those questions along the way or at the end. In a moment, I'm going to hand over to our guest presenter today, Deb Algeo, who will guide you through the benefits of Lean Canvas and how to get the most out of using the tool to develop a product, a business venture, or an idea. But before we begin, I just wanted to share contact details and encourage you to connect with us to discuss any business needs you might have. Our number 134708. You can speak directly to one of our small business bankers. You can set up an appointment over the phone or video like this. And we're also available face-to-face at our location near you. We also have a dedicated small business hub on our website, and there you'll find a range of fantastic tools, guides, product information to help you through any stage of your business. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Deb. Deb Algeo, Associate Director of Innovation here at NAB, has deep expertise in helping teams really explore, experiment, and validate their ideas. She has facilitated large-scale blockchain and RegTech projects, incubated startup technology apps, and built an enterprise-wide methodology for project delivery. She's currently working on a global fintech partnership program with Global Open Finance Challenge. Now, Deb regularly uses Lean Canvas as a methodology and has specifically used it for all of her incubation projects, as well as helping business owners define and test their assumptions. Over to you, Deb.
Thanks, Beata. Thanks for having me, everyone. Okay, so I'm Deb. Thank you so much for having me today. Really excited to share my experience and this tool with you. I'm just further on from what Beata was saying and introducing me. I just wanted to sort of introduce myself a little bit further from my experience in corporate innovation. So yes, I've been working in corporate innovation for just shy of a decade. Prior to that, I actually worked in startups. So I worked for startups and actually owned several of my own startups. And a caveat there, some startups I've had that are very successful and others not. So, really wanting to share my experience using a tool to help me sort of along those journeys too. So prior to working at NAB, working in startups, I also helped consult for startups everywhere from food delivery businesses through to construction companies. So I was very ingrained in the startup and small business community. It's something I'm extremely, extremely passionate about. Because of that experience and passion, I bring my entrepreneurial spirit into my role here in innovation partnerships at NAB. I'm really striving to drive change and value for our customers. So today, I'm going to walk you through a lean canvas tool. This tool I've been using since I worked in startups and small businesses and continue to use in corporate innovation. This tool is extremely valuable in supporting the success as your idea, but also learning about when you need to sort of fail fast and pivot your idea. So on your screen now, you'll be able to see the lean canvas. As part of establishing a new idea and a new business, it's important to really be able to synthesize your product on a page. So using a tool like the lean canvas allows you to view that, but also consider all the different variables of that product before you dive into the deep end building and investing in this product or this concept. I find it's a fantastic tool to be able to understand and communicate your product in a really succinct way. Something that we'll delve into a little bit later in this webinar. But honestly, you never know when you'll end up in a lift or an elevator with an investor and a CEO. So we can actually transform the elements of this lean canvas into something in that, 30 to 60 seconds you're in the lift and pitching your idea and your concept. It's definitely a tool that's very relevant for someone who's considering new business ideas. So also throughout this webinar, I might have sort of a language change when I'm referring to the use case on the canvas. So you'll hear me say product, concept, idea, but as we sort of were mentioning before, this is really relevant to your sort of early stage conceptual ideas. So any kind of one of those wordings, that's what I'm referring to, the early parts of, your business. It's important to distinguish that because the lean canvas is actually adapted from the business model canvas, which is for more established businesses. So lean canvas is developed by Ash Moira, and it's for really outlining almost like a desirability, viability, and feasibility framework for an early stage concept. So something you can test and validate in an iterative process and make changes before you do your bulk investments into it. I will preface it that, there's no sort of, this is the golden way to fill out a lean canvas. Everybody has their own variation of it. So I'm going to take you through the way that I have and, are continuing to use the canvas. We'll take a deep dive into each one of the sections on the canvas on your screen. We'll do a quick example of how you could use a canvas in a use case. And at the end, we'll round things off with, using this to test, the canvas to test, but also taking the components of your lean canvas to really finesse a elevator pitch about your concept. As Beata said, there is a Q&A function on here, so feel free to type your questions into there. Likely we'll get to it at the end, but we can definitely reflect back on the slides depending on what the questions are. So we'll jump right in. Oftentimes when I run through a lean canvas, the first thing you notice is there's a whole bunch of different, rectangles and squares that are different sizes. This is for a reason. This is to ensure that we emphasize the larger boxes more than the smallers. And that's sort of a mental thing that we tend to jump to one other than the other. So we'll take a deep dive into that. You'll also notice that there's sort of numbers all over the place. This does indicate the sequence that we will be filling out the lean canvas. It's important to fill it out in this way because different components actually relate to others. So we'll take a deep dive into that. We'll start off with the first tile, which is your problem. So This is really important to start with the problem. I even know from my startup days, jumping right to the solution and then retrofitting a customer and a problem is a very, very common thing to happen in the market. So when you look at your problem, what is it that you're trying to solve? Really, really finesse that. What is it? Oftentimes, I recommend that you list out 3 of your top problems that you're addressing in this section. You will notice, as we were sort of discussing before, it is a larger section. That's because we want to put a lot of thought, a lot of consideration and emphasis on really defining what this problem is. What problem does your product solve? And does this problem actually exist? An exercise that I like to do when I'm walking through problems, when I do a lead canvas or with my team, is ask yourself, why is this a problem? I often like to ask myself why 3 times, like really finesse. What is the problem that I'm solving here? Oftentimes when you just write down a problem and you don't ask why, you're actually going to end up solving for the symptom of the problem rather than the problem itself. It's really important to finesse this as well, because the customer really needs to see this as an issue or an incentive. Now, problems can also be known or unknown problems, but when your solution arrives in the market, the customer will realize that. So just keep that in mind. Just remember, you and your business, you can't force a customer to care about a problem. You have to tap into a really genuine interest there. So I would think of it as well as customers seeking solutions versus you are seeking the customers. So when you consider known and unknown, just be aware of that, because as we move into your channels and your value proposition and your customer segments, that's really going to ripple down into the rest of your canvas. Okay, your next section. So we've jumped across the canvas to customer segments. So customer segments, we really want to narrow that down and finesse that to a detail that we can really validate. So generally, when I meet with people, we can have really vague ways of addressing customer segments. So I've banned the term millennial in a lot of my projects because we really want to dive deeper into what exactly are we referring to there. So we can break it down into customers, users, and early adopters of this idea. So always keep in mind, how can I segment this further? If you have multiple target markets in mind, let's make sure we do a canvas for each one of those target markets. Understanding if, we were talking to a doctor and a lawyer, likely there's going to be different channels and value propositions and metrics and so on and so forth for us to target both of those customers. I would also consider very special attention when you are looking into your early adopters. These are your original small segment of people that you can do rapid testing and validation with your concept. So they have a high tolerance for uncertainty in exchange for being the first ones to get access to your unique value proposition. An example, when I look at customer segments, just to sort of depict what we're thinking when we're saying early adopters and segmenting, I like to use Facebook as an example. So Facebook obviously is a massive and very influential company at the moment. But when Mark Zuckerberg first launched it, his early adopters were his friends. So very, very small segment. His next addressable market were Harvard students at that time that he was at university at Harvard. And then following that, the next customer segment was other universities. So you can see that you do start with a smaller pool and you work your way out, but it's really important because we'll learn and we'll test and we'll validate as we sort of expand the network there. Now, I've mentioned customers and users as the other two things to consider in customer segments. So this is really important to differentiate because customers and users are fundamentally different in the way that consider customers are the one that exchange the value with you. Users are the users of your product. So when we think about later in the lean canvas, you're going to have very different propositions and channel distribution strategies for each of those. A good example to round that up would be if you built a kid's toy or a computer game. So maybe the 12-year-old child isn't buying the game, maybe the parent is. So the 12-year-old child is your user of the game and your customer is the parent. So when we think about that as we go through the lean canvas, how are you building a strategy to exchange value with the parent but pique the interest of the user? Okay, so our next section. So it is smack bang in the middle. Again, this is one of your larger sections. It is the unique value proposition. Oftentimes what we see here is when filling out a canvas or considering a business idea, you know, we figured out our problem, we figured out our customers, let's go straight to solution. But I implore you to really look and finesse at your unique value proposition. This is the underlying reason why someone buys, you know, something new or something over another product. It's the reason that they're purchasing and you piqued their interest. So it's a great way to think about it is the product's tagline, the primary reason you are different than others and worth buying. It would be really useful to list the features or reasons you believe your product is better than your competitors, and you can derive a statement from that. So an example of this that I saw that I really liked was Netflix, your favorite movies on demand with 0 late fees. So outlining 3 unique features that they have there. So again, this is a large section. Let's put a lot of emphasis on this. You know, why is there value perceived by your user or your customer? Why should someone buy your product over someone else's? And what about it solves your unique customer problem? So what value am I bringing to my customers and users by solving their problem? So you can see we can trickle back through the lean canvas. Okay, solution. This is generally our favorite bit. Everybody wants to jump to here, but now you know the problem that you've got to solve. You know who you're solving it for and why it's going to be different. So let's think about the minimum feature set that demonstrates how your solution addresses the customer problem in section 1. So this is smaller than other sections. Just to sort of reiterate, we often jump to solution. So when we look at a canvas, it's really great to think of it differently than we naturally would. So less emphasis is put on this. It doesn't mean it's not important, but we're just challenging the way that we naturally gravitate towards the solution component. Again, with the solution component, let's stick to the rule of 3s. So let's map out sort of 3 features of the idea, the ones most directly mapped to your problem statement. So this will really ensure your product or service that you're creating is relevant to the problems that you claim for it to be solving. And just remember, this section, this is what people are exchanging value for or paying for. Your next section on the left-hand side below solution is your key metrics section. Extremely important section. How are you going to measure and track your customer engagement, their excitement, the usage of the product? What do you need to know if you're succeeding or if you're not, and if you have to pivot and where you have to pivot? These metrics will be really vital to that. These will actually allow you to go back to your canvas and assess potentially where the opportunity or the challenge with your idea lies. This is going to be an extremely important part when you're pitching to investors, so do keep that in mind. some examples of key metrics that we can use when we're evaluating our propositions. How will you measure your customer base and their behavior? How will you measure the effectiveness of your solution? How will you measure your financial performance? How will you measure your social impact? And how will you measure your traction? I like to put together a leading metric and a lagging metric. The lagging metric will let me know when I really need to consider pivoting or changing my concept quite drastically. And leading is that really great success measure of your product when you know you can start really investing in launching this concept. Okay, we've jumped over to the right side, to channels. Channels is the way that you interact with your customers and your users, and you inform them of your product and your idea and your development. This doesn't have to be blue sky channels. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. You can look at it like a free and a paid channel distribution model, but you can evaluate traditional mechanisms like paid advertising, search engine marketing, social media ads, banner ads, paid ads, outdoor ads, websites or blogs. They're all sort of available channels here, and that's what you really want to list out here. When you look at your channel, think about your customer segments. So who is your customer? Where are they? Is outdoor advertising going to reach your customers? Is that really going to be the best place for your unique value proposition? Really start to consider the latter part of the lean canvas that we've just gone through when you're designing and looking into your channels of distribution. Okay, so now we've gone to the bottom part of the lean canvas. So we're highlighting cost structure here. So when you think about cost and revenue, at some point you've got to create value. So establishing what the cost of this concept will be very fundamental to measuring and understanding the success of your product, also designing your channel distribution, your marketing, so on and so forth. So you want to list out all your fixed costs, all your variable costs, how much will it be to launch this concept, but also maintain this concept, considering a run rate. Consider each stage of your startup, from creating a website to acquiring users, to hiring employees, to producing the goods, to marketing the goods, and then getting them to customers. These are all fundamental to map out in your cost structure. What will you need to do in terms of building tech, training your staff, phased rollout of costs? What will be the main expenses for your business? So, the cost of the goods. Are there research and innovation costs, licensing fees, app development, rent of your office, running your sales channels? This will be really important for you, for your investors, for whomever that you're pitching to understand where your break even is. So will it be at 10 customers? Will it be at 50,000, a million? This will give you a really good understanding of the success and the run rate of your business. So we'll jump over to the other side, which is revenue streams. So revenue streams help identify your revenue model. So outline your back of the envelope assumptions for lifetime value, gross margin, break-even point, and then also the monetary sources that will fuel your company. How will you and this concept generate an income? So here you want to really think about your pricing model for your product or service and highlight the other sources of revenue: sales, subscription, ads, freemium, so on and so forth. When evaluating a pricing model, I really like to think of this example of water. So when you go into a gas station or a petrol station, you'll see your $2 water and you'll see your $7 water. So because of the canvases associated with both of those waters, they've established a problem, a UVP, a customer segment, and a solution that targets those two pricing models. So all the work you've done prior to can help you to establish what kind of pricing model you can put around your water. You know, inevitably at the end of the day, it is still water, but it's all about your value proposition, your customer segment, and their perception of your solution and the value that it brings to them. So when we want to think about revenue models, let's think about it like this. You know, are you selling a product? Is that where you're getting your revenue? Are you selling a service, like a marketing agency? Are you selling a membership to, you know, a gym or a online rental, movie rental company? Are you selling advertisements to your audience? So social media, agent or broker fees, you know, for a rental house. So consider, you know, these mechanisms for how are you planning to drive value for your organization and to your customers. And the lucky last part, it's last, but it's so, so important. And this is where, you know, my favorite part of the canvas really is. So I love Big Mac, so I call this the magic Big Mac sauce section of it. This is your unfair advantage. This is where you stand out from the crowd. This is something that generally can't be copied or bought or is very, very difficult to. You know, it's the ingredient that makes your customers feel something when they're using your product. So, you know, you could have a better technology. You could have the best burger sauce, a world-class founding team, large pool of resources, large pool of customers, large pool of intelligence data, just really fantastic branding, really fantastic salespeople, or very unique partnerships within your idea. So that's sort of a deep dive into the 9 sections of the Lean Canvas. I like to just jump into a little bit of an example, a quick example about what happens when you start to use the Lean Canvas and how things can interact and affect. And when you revisit your Lean Canvas, what that could look like. So we're just going to use an electric car example here. So very, very common now, but if we think about the electric car industry, there really wasn't single just electric car brands in the market. The last company that, you know, really launched a car company before Tesla was Ford. So quite a period of time. So a very difficult market to enter into. So when it came to electric cars, the problem that, you know, electric car companies were trying to solve, you know, there's just rising fuel prices, there's rising carbon emissions, you know, how can we solve for this? Well, you know, because of this problem, we want to create something for the mass markets, because this problem is everybody's problem. So the idea would be, so to allow us to create a product that the mass market would make to solve for these problems, we would need to create affordable transport and green transport. So inevitably, what we're looking to create is a small electric car for the mass market. So what we'll need to do, because, you know, we need to reach the mass market, is we're going to have really, really low cost and a really low margin. So that means that everyone in the mass market can get access to our small, you know, inexpensive car to make, and then we can solve the problem for rising fuel prices and carbon emissions. As you can imagine, that simply wasn't the case. If we do research into electric cars, so we still have our fundamental problems, but, you know, unfortunately, the car was going to be really expensive. The battery for electric cars was really expensive. So no longer could we create, you know, an affordable vehicle or have a low cost, so we can get rid of the affordable vehicle. Well, no longer is it going to be for mass market. So, what is the concept that we're building here, and how are we going to reach our market? So what we can see on the lean canvas is, as these things change and we revisit the sections of the lean canvas, you'll see movement here. So the problems still stay the same of rising fuel prices and carbon emissions, but we're going to go for an affluent market. We're going to create a luxury green car. We're going to move a luxury green car. So we understand that our cost structure went up. We could still have sort of low revenue margins, but that affected our product and our customer base. So you can see that ripple through the canvas. Another example here is, traditionally we would look at like a dealership to sell a car due to sort of the immature nature of electric cars. That wasn't possible. So this electric car company was moving into affluent shopping centers to target an affluent market, to get them to jump into the luxury green car and realize why it was, so profound and why it was the best car for them. So it's a very iterative process. And this is a small example of how we can take the lean canvas, scribble down our initial thoughts, validate it with the market, and come back and make changes accordingly. So just to highlight again, the iterative process, when I work on something like this, I allow it to get really messy. This doesn't have to be a really beautiful presenting experience. Get a pencil, get it up on your PowerPoint pack and just start typing away. You're going to make loads of changes. So don't feel super committed when you're going through this process. Part of this iterative process is we want our canvases to tell a compelling story. That means that all these pieces really do need to fit together. Specifically, the customers we describe on the right need to match the problems on the left. And that unique value proposition in the middle is where your sort of customer and market really do come together. Does your solution make those value propositions a reality? Is this actually going to happen? Are customers really going to see this value? Do your channels actually reach the customer segments which you've detailed? Are customers willing to pay based on your revenue model for your UVP? Is it that strong of a UVP that they perceive your revenue model seems fair for that value that you're giving them? These revenues, also consider these revenues will need to outpace your costs, or else we'll need to break even. Another thing is, your Big Mac sauce, your unfair advantage, this really has to be real. Customers have to see the magic in what you're providing. So your canvas really is iterative. It's, you could establish a product for a year, pull out a canvas again and do it again. You don't have to put this away. It's not a set and forget. You'll continuously change it as you go, and you'll continuously change it as you speak to people and subject matter experts and investors. So to move into your iterative process, allow your market and your customer to help design what this looks like. So, validate through experimentation. Me just jotting things down on a lean canvas, it's just hypothetical. So we need to take those guesses and replace them with evidence. And we're going to do this through a validation process. So we can go and talk to customers. We can take someone out for a coffee and just walk them through our idea. You could launch a landing page. So register your interest for this concept. You could find out, who is registering their interest. You could use analytics to evaluate where they live and their age demographic and their roles. That insight's also really available. You can track the channels that they're coming from to really validate the channels that you want to put in your lean canvas and you want to invest in. You could create a prototype of your technology. You could scribble it down on a piece of paper. You could build it in on a platform and test it. You could use that prototype to conduct customer interviews. So sitting down with someone, asking if they genuinely care about the value proposition and the solution that you're providing. And if they're willing to pay for it, that it's a great conversation to have with them. As I've sort of said before, I've run startups that haven't been successful. Remember, a failed experiment, a failed idea really is a success. For every failed idea that you have, you're closer to the successful one. So going through this process before you launch into the market, it can save you an incredible amount of time and energy, and it really gives you some interesting insights towards a model that genuinely works. Okay, so the last thing is, when we look at the lean canvas, we can create a really great elevator pitch or a Gaddy pitch. But also, if you think about your investor pitch packs, you would follow a very, very similar process. So you would follow the starting out with the problem, the customers that you're solving this for, what's your UVP and your solution, what's your go-to-market strategy, what's your commercial model around it. This, even if you follow a very similar 1 to 9 step, you would create a really fantastic pitch pack. But for today's sake, we're going to go through what an elevator pitch could be like using the lean canvas. So you never know when you're going to be in the lift with a CEO or investor or someone you can validate your idea with. So we can use this canvas to walk through this. So this is a 3-step process to structure your idea in a less than 30 seconds. So we'll start with the problem being solved, for whom, how do you plan to solve this problem, and then some examples or facts to back this up. So you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen, you know how. So this is where you're articulating your customer problem that you are solving. Well, what we do is, this is where you're explaining your solution, which you have on your page. And in fact, details that address your audience major concerns: security, privacy, traction. So you'll find all of these elements on your lean canvas. So just a quick example would be carbon emissions are rising. We're seeking to be carbon neutral by 2050, and the fuel economy costs are increasing. Building an electric car for Silicon Valley residents that are faster and more luxurious than traditional cars themselves. And then, in fact, 85% of Australians over 45 are climate conscious, and 50% buying a new luxury car said that they would prefer this car over their traditional petrol cars. So there is your elevator or Gaddy pitch, all pulled from your lean canvas. So thank you for listening. Wanted to use this time to open up. If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Here we go. Okay, so a question from Liz is, how can we test our solution with our chosen segments without costing too much? So things that I've done in the past would be, you could create a Facebook group and put your unique value proposition in there and see how people interact with your Facebook group. There are plenty of website companies that actually allow you to create landing pages for free, drag and drop, even give you a like a domain name. So you could launch something like that, drive traffic to your landing page, see how they interact. Do they register their interest? You can sort of count that as a pre-launch conversion, and then even sort of talking to customers. Historically, I would go out with friends or friends of friends that ran other businesses or were in distribution, take them out for a coffee. I think one of the best advice I've ever been given is, the $4 or $5 it is for a coffee, you're always going to get so much more value out of interacting with someone and learning from their experiences there. Let's have a look. Okay, so the question I have here is, what if you think your solution will be liked by everyone? How do you choose a customer segment to focus on? So I'm sure we're all very guilty of this. I have to stop myself quite often. And when I'm thinking about something or evaluating something, oh, but I would want this, or I would want that. But I am not the customer. So, how are we going to test for that? So you can do really blue sky, and you could put a value proposition out there and sort of validate who lands on your landing page. But, I think when you look at a problem, you're going to be able to identify people that really understand and feel that problem. So I would implore you to use the 3 whys. So why is this a problem? Why is this a problem? Why is this a problem? Because once you get to the actual problem, not the symptom, it's going to be a lot easier to determine who has that problem, but also validate if they do. So you could pick, 3 different customer segment groups. You could launch in the past, I've launched a Facebook advertisement or an Instagram advertisement. And then I looked at, the wording around my product and who I was targeting. And I did like an ABC test on who actually engaged with the value proposition and the problem and the branding the most. And that was a good way for me to start of who I was going to target in my customer segments. So the question we have here is, what if your solution resonates with your customer segment, but your revenue model doesn't work? How can you find out about other revenue models? Okay, so your revenue model and your cost model are codependent on each other. So I would say you'd want to look at what is costing so much, or is it that you're not getting traction? So oftentimes when you invest in a product, smaller volumes are more expensive, and you're sort of waiting till you get over to the 10,000 mark to really sort of get to that accelerated profitability model. So, I would look back at your cost structure, which is the stage before in the lean canvas. I would look back at your solution and your value proposition, and then all the way down to you. So follow your lean canvas backwards. I think in parallel to sort of your revenue model, if you are solving for a fundamental problem, a real pain that customer segment feels, then you will have more success in building the latter part of your lean canvas or your concept. So spend ample time defining that problem. Ask yourself the 3 whys, validate your customer segment, find out that your UVP actually is unique, that 10 other people aren't offering it for cheaper. That's important. Benchmark yourself, benchmark your revenue models against competitors, or find something that makes it more sparkly than theirs, or solves a more fundamental pain point than theirs. Definitely use that canvas to iterate it and test it. Your customers will help you co-design. I think as part of this process, I implore you to read The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. Allow them to be part of your journey. Don't just send a product out to the wide world. Deliver something that is important to your customers and is helping them and solving a fundamental problem, and helping them to prosper and grow. Thank you. So I think that's all the questions we have today. So I will hand over. Thank you for having me, everyone, and I'll hand over to Beata.
Deb, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us today, and I hope everyone had some benefits and learned some tips and tricks around using the Lean Canvas tool to develop a product, perhaps test an idea and continue in their business venture. So I really hope that this session was informative and practical. And I want to add that this is part of a series of webinars that we've been doing to help our customers succeed. And if you'd like to revisit any of the previous webinars or register for any upcoming webinars, then please visit us at nab.com.au/business webinars. And as a reminder, if you'd like to connect with any of our small business bankers, please don't hesitate to call us on 134708, and that number can connect you straight to a banker, and you can speak to someone directly, set up an appointment to a time that's convenient for you. And finally, if you like what you saw today, please let us know, because there will be a survey when you close out of the webinar, and we appreciate all the feedback. And you're welcome to share this content with your business network so they can also benefit. And on behalf of all of us, we wish you, your family, and your business the very best, and look forward to seeing you at our future webinars. Thank you so much, and take care.